A civil war is possible because of China's population collapse. That's the latest prediction from geopolitical expert and strategist Peter Zyyhan. As we move through time, different generations bring unique challenges and opportunities to society and the economy. The changes they bring can reshape the world in hard-to-predict ways. China's workforce is one of the fastest collapsing in history. Recent data suggests that China's birth rate has dropped dramatically in the past 5 years, even more than what happened to the Jews in Europe during the Holocaust. This decline is so severe that it threatens China's future as a unified, industrialized nation. Some independent Chinese demographers argue that the situation is worse than official reports suggest. They believe China's population has been overcounted by over 100 million, which could be even direr. If this trend continues, China could experience a population collapse of more than 70% over the next 20 to 30 years. This would leave an aging population without the necessary skills or physical capability to maintain the country's economy, leading to the possible end of the Han ethnicity this century. In an in-depth analysis, geopolitical expert Peter Zyyhan exposed China's developing threat of population collapse. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video, where we will break down Peter's analysis of how this population collapse could trigger a civil war and affect current and future generations. Also guys, only a small percentage of my viewers are subscribed. If you enjoy economics, geopolitics, and history, consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Now, let's jump in with this speech from Peter Zyyhan.
Then there's us, kind of a chimney. Couple things going on here that don't really relate to the rest of the world. They're really homegrown. So number one, globalization was a bribe. We never invested our economy into it. So we didn't industrialize nearly as quickly as everyone else. Slower process. Second, a lot of elbow room in the United States. So we didn't go farm to city. We went farm to small town to suburb to city. And so the degradation in our birth rate was much slower than everywhere else. And it shows. If we keep aging at our current rate, we won't be in a German-Korean situation until 2070. Again, a lot of time to figure out something else. And then there's the Chinese. This is already one of the 5 fastest collapsing workforces in human history. And this data from June of last year is wrong. They updated the data in July. Check out the bottom of it. They are now reporting officially a larger drop in the birth rate in the last 5 years in China than what happened to the Jews of Europe during the Holocaust. That's official data. Unofficially, the Chinese Academy of Sciences, which is kind of their wise men group that interprets government statistics, says that this is wrong, that they've overcounted their population by more than 100 million people, suggesting that the yellow bars don't exist. And this is not the low case forecast now. There are a number of independent Chinese demographers who say that those yellow bars should be more than twice as large. China is not a country in demographic decay. China is a country in the final stages of absolute demographic collapse, and it will cease existing as a unified, industrialized nation state within 10 years. Now, how it goes down, what happens the next day, those are going to be 2 of the questions of our age. And for those of you who know Chinese history, you will recognize that this has happened before. This will be the 28th Chinese civilizational collapse. But this time, everyone's urbanized and old. And if you start throwing 60-somethings into land that is now rice paddy, because the good agricultural land is long gone, we're talking about a population collapse north of 70% over the next 20 to 30 years. And whoever's left won't have skills or physical capability. We're now in a situation where we can seriously talk about the end of the Han ethnicity this century. I am thrilled that I can say this. Baby boomers don't matter anymore. Oh, thank God. We've been stressed about everything about the baby boomers since they burst upon the scene in the early 60s. And now, half of them have finally entered retirement, and we can start talking about what's next. The snake is finally swallowing that watermelon. Of course, they're the baby boomers, and it's all got to be about them. So they are rolling a couple grenades into the room on their way out. Number one, capital. Half of the boomers have already retired. That means half of them have already liquidated their life savings and gone from stocks and bonds into relatively low velocity investments like T-bills and cash. The velocity of capital has slowed. The cost of capital has roughly tripled in the last 5 years. It will triple again in the next few years as the rest of them liquidate their savings upon retirement. This isn't the Fed. This isn't Trump, this isn't Biden, this is not the business cycle. This is the boomers saying goodbye in that special way they have. Second, labor. Half of the boomers have already retired. They're our single largest concentration of skilled labor. The inflation we've been experiencing the last few years, I'm not suggesting there aren't a lot of things in play, there are a lot of things in play, but the single biggest piece is labor inflation. And that will last until such time as another large generation fills their shoes. And that won't be for quite some time. So if you're going to ignore everything else that I say, remember this: hire and borrow, hire and borrow, hire and borrow. Because the boomers aren't done leaving yet. And capital and labor costs are going to go up sharply from here for years, and in some cases decades. This is the best macroeconomic environment for expansion we're going to have in quite some time. More on that in a minute.
China's rapidly declining population is not just an economic issue, as it could also lead to severe social instability, potentially culminating in civil war. The dramatic drop in birth rates and the potential overcounting of the population suggest that China may face a population collapse of unprecedented scale. As the population shrinks and ages, the country will struggle to maintain its labor force, economic growth, and social cohesion. The consequences of such a demographic crisis are profound. An aging population, without sufficient younger generations to support it, can lead to widespread discontent. Younger generations may be overwhelmed by caring for the elderly while facing limited job opportunities and economic stagnation. This could exacerbate regional inequalities, with poorer, rural areas suffering the most as resources become scarcer. Moreover, as the central government struggles to manage these demographic challenges, local governments and factions within China might assert more control, leading to fragmentation and unrest. The weakening of central authority could spark conflicts between different regions, particularly if some areas attempt to secede or gain more autonomy. Ethnic tensions, especially in regions like Xinjiang and Tibet, could also flare up, adding to the risk of civil conflict. In the most extreme scenario, if the Chinese government fails to address these issues effectively, economic decline, social unrest, and regional power struggles could escalate into a civil war. This would threaten China's stability and have severe implications for global security and the economy, given China's central role in global trade and politics. Let's get back to Peter Zyyhan as he discusses this further.
Next generation down, Gen X, this is me. I'm part of what was until very recently the smallest generation in American history. And if there's a single defining trait for my generation, it's just that we absolutely loathe the boomers. We have a lot of reasons for that. All of them are backed by statistics. But let's focus on the one that's most appropriate for this conversation, and that's family. When the boomers were released upon the world in the 60s, there were so many of them that they competed with one another for labor, or for remuneration, and so they pushed down the cost of labor. And it got so bad that they did two things that no generation before had done. Number one, they became mobile. This reputation that Americans have for jumping around, that's mostly the boomers looking for better job opportunities, where there are fewer other boomers to compete with. And second, the women's lib movement. The pressure on the household was so much that women came into the workforce in order to get jobs to increased family take-home pay, which only pushed down the cost of labor more, which is why the boomers have the highest divorce rate in our history. When you have that sort of fiscal pressure every single day, of course it's going to be hard on the family. Now, my generation looks at this and like, oh no, no, we are not gonna make that mistake. For us, our families and our time are at least as important as our money. We are far more likely to be single income households. Now, our relationships are more durable because of that, but wow, have we paid a price. Because we have been a small number, like 11 of us, while there's been 75 million boomers, and we've been the low men and the women on the totem pole our entire professional careers, and we have been swimming in that supersaturated labor market, and so we have seen the lowest increases in take-home pay of any American worker generation ever, until about 4 or 5 years ago. And a lot of this has been lost in the COVID mess for the data, but it's pretty clear. Because 4 or 5 years ago, the boomer retirement really started picking up speed. And even if everyone in my generation wanted to work, and I assure you we do not, there would have never been enough of us to fill all of those boomer shoes. And so over the last 4 years, we have seen record increases in take-home pay because we're the only game in town. Gen X, our time has finally arrived. Now, the rest of you know this is labor inflation, but you can suck it. All right, Zoomers. The central fact to remember about the Zoomer generation is that they are not millennials. Millennials were raised by the boomers. They were told that they were special. They didn't keep track of the score at the soccer game. They went off for Europe for 6 years after college to find themselves. Very high self-esteem, the millennials. Very good managers. Very good with people. Great collaborative, cooperative team workers. Those are not the Zoomers. The Zoomers were raised by Gen X. And they were raised with certain bedtime stories that are not the little engine that could. It's more like, yeah, there's this fairy tale about Medicare and Medicaid. It's not gonna be there for you. We're gonna keep track of the score at the soccer game. We're gonna write down a little book. We're gonna read it to you every night. You wanna survive, you just wanna exist, you've gotta be better. Not better than the millennials, that's easy. Better than everyone. You are on your own, you can rely on no one. And when you're 17 and a half, get the hell out of my house. They're hardworking, almost pathologically so. They're loyal. You give them a chance, you give them a job, they will follow you into hell. Virtually. They never want to actually meet you in person. They're the most antisocial generation we've ever had. They've got the highest suicide rate we've ever seen. Their dream job is to work at home in a closet that locks from the inside, coding. And if you need workers for that, they're brilliant. But they don't want to do anything where they have to meet a person face to face or see the sky. And that has some implications for the labor market. They're also the smallest generation we've ever had, which means that our current labor drought isn't going to be fixed by them. It's going to be fixed by the millennials.
So why is this important to everyone? As each generation ages, they bring their challenges and opportunities to society. The baby boomers' retirement creates significant economic changes, from capital costs to labor shortages. Generation X is stepping up to fill the gaps, but their smaller numbers mean that labor and capital costs will likely continue to rise. Meanwhile, China faces a demographic collapse that could reshape the global economic landscape and lead to internal strife. The rapid population decline could destabilize the country, potentially sparking unrest or civil war as resources become scarce and the government struggles to maintain control. At the same time, the impact of technological advancements cannot be overlooked. The rapid pace of innovation alters job markets and societal norms, requiring each generation to adapt to new realities. With their innate digital fluency, Zoomers can lead in this tech-driven era. Still, they must also contend with the uncertainties of such rapid change, including concerns about job stability and privacy. Zoomers, the newest generation, are entering a world where they must be prepared to face these challenges head-on. Their realistic and competitive nature may give them an edge, but they must also navigate a world where the rules constantly evolve. Individuals and policymakers must understand the dynamics of this rapidly evolving environment. By recognizing each generation's unique contributions and challenges, we can better prepare for the future and ensure society thrives amid these transitions. What do you think of these developments? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more updates and analysis as we track this critical story.